Good morning. Good morning. I'm setting everything up now. So give me a second. Oh hey. So I think you have to request to join. You have to accept. Oh, there it goes. We're waiting. Oh, there it goes. Hi.
Hey,
We're waiting for Earl to join. And he wanted to join somewhere else. Let me turn this down. So let's just give us a minute. We're waiting for the other person to join. Thank you for being here. Earl, you have to request to join as well, so that we can start. Just give a minute. Let me see if it's here. Okay, I sent a request. Can you guys see me, hear me well? Okay. Hi.
hey, how you doing?
Good. The other participant, I'm not sure what happened. I'm just gonna assume that she'll be back.
Okay,
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. A little bit tired, but good. How about you?
Yes, I'm feeling good. I'm in a really good space. So
Okay, good.
so far so good.
Okay, good.
Just gonna give her a little minute and then we can start.
Okay,
I'm not sure what happened. Maybe it was her connection.
it be like that sometimes. I'm not even gonna lie.
Let me see. She just told me it's not letting her join. Let me try to send her a request. There it goes.
There we go.
Can you see me?
Okay, great. Yeah,
Can you hear me?
yes. Can you both hear and see well? Everything's good?
Yeah, everything is in the same.
Yep.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you both for joining our discussion. I definitely want to introduce the question, but I first want to, I look like a floating head. 1 second. I first want to just kind of introduce ourselves and say, our names and what exactly do we do. So I can start just to kind of like break the ice. I'm sorry, I look like a floating head and I don't enjoy that. So I can start just to kind of break the ice. So my name is Raquel Simmons. I am a marriage. Sorry guys. I am a marriage and family therapist. I've been doing that for a little over 2 years now, and yeah, that's pretty much me. Anyone else want to join or start before we begin? While I get my
Yeah.
computer here.
My name is Andrew Perkins. I'm a LMSW, currently working with students in the DOE system. I've been in the social work realm for 10 plus years at this point.
Okay.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Earl O'Brien. I am a mental health counselor and psychotherapist. Currently working at Step by Step Counseling Center, where I service clients who deal with traumatic brain injuries, trauma, anxiety, depression uh, in the Black community.
Nice. So again, thank you both. I got my camera together. Thank you both for joining me. So, our question for today, and the reason I brought you both here is because I posed a question on my Instagram that states, how come it takes a village to raise a child, but as an adult, we must be comfortable with growing alone? And I asked you both to join because although there were different participants who expressed their responses, both of you had very different responses, and both of your responses really sparked my interest. And so I just wanted to just bring you both here just to create that level of discussion and kind of see if we can expand on your responses. So, for starters, when you heard that question, when you heard the question, I'll repeat it. How come it takes a village to raise a child, but as an adult, we must be comfortable with growing alone? So when you heard that question in itself, what did you think? Before you answer it, how do you feel about the question? What were your first initial thoughts about the question? Earl, you can go first.
Okay. My initial thoughts about the question, it made me think about me growing up personally, and just having that support system, my caretakers and everyone that was just around me at the time as a kid, and just having that space where I was able to just be free and explore and just adventure as what normal children do. Growing up, I started to experience certain losses and different things and different events in life, and I realized that I was all by myself, and I was just like, wow, this is really crazy. And it came to me that we, especially as bodies of culture, have been conditioned to not show up for each other.
Mm-hmm.
We've been conditioned to, and even in terms of that conditioning, has shown signs of self-abandonment, self-betrayal, and going from people pleasing and doing things just to be accepted, or you know doing things just to get that type of support that you need, going the extra mile, and just like I said, yeah, abandoning who you are just to be accepted by others. So that's what I was thinking about in terms of that question.
Nice. I do want to come back to that, but Ms. Deandra, I do want to ask you the same question before we go back to Earl's point.
I think for me, similar to what Earl said, it did make me think about my upbringing growing up, my family, friends, but also at a certain point in terms of losing people or navigating into my own personal life and into independence, not having people, and whether or not I was going to allow that to falter, to allow me to falter, or am I going to stand on my own 2 feet and get done what needs to get done. And just through my experiences in terms of schooling, just a variety of different traumas that I experienced, I feel like in the instance of that, it was up to me to get it done. It wasn't up to anybody else. And so it made me think of that. Yeah.
Okay, so first off, thank you for sharing. That is very interesting, and this is exactly why I had both of you come on, because to the same question, there are many different perspectives and many different views. Earl, you have stated that when you seen this question, you've been able to think of abandonment and the way we view our connections with people, whether that's us attachments to unhealthy attachments to others and clinging towards them. And right. Deandra, you have mentioned being able to see from your upbringing as well, this you didn't want the attachments towards others to hinder your growth. And so that's what I was grasping. Is that correct?
Pretty accurate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Right.
And so now I'm going to ask you both to respond to the question.
Who you want to go first?
Okay, so that was a good question. Earl, you can go first.
Okay. And say that question again, just for the purpose of
course,
dialogue.
yeah. So I'll state the question again. The question is, how come it takes a village to raise a child, but as an adult, we must be comfortable with growing alone?
I feel like we must be. I wouldn't. I don't know if I would say comfortable. I probably would say accepting the
Okay.
fact that we have to be alone,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day, with our different attachment styles, I believe that people feel like no one is obligated to be there for someone at the end of the day, and
Mm-hmm.
people use the statement like well, we're all going through something, so
Yeah.
I can't really be there for you if I can't be there for myself. Like just different angles, different perspectives.
Yeah.
And also, which can be a good or bad thing, could be like a catch-22, because at the end of the day, it's like, as far as we go as people of color, I feel the only time we show up for each other or try to care for one another is at funerals, and
Mm-hmm.
that's it's such a disheartening thing, because I've seen it with friends. I've experienced it myself. You're not even ready to say goodbye to the person that transitioned out of this life. You plan the funeral, you plan the wake, you plan all these things. 2 weeks after, everyone goes about their lives, but you're stuck with that dissociation because you're not ready to deal or accept the loss that you just experienced. So now I can think about it in different angles, but I want to point that one out, because most times in our culture, that's what we really go through.
Agree.
This is what really happens. And it's so disturbing, because it's like, it almost comes off as performance of care, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of you showing up for a person because you just want to be seen through the public eye,
Mm-hmm.
that you look like as if you care about them. But when they're home by themselves and they're having those moments of grief, those moments of trauma dissociation, those moments of substance use to numb the pain, cutting themselves, whatever the case may be, there's no one there to pick up the phone to call, actually, hey, are you still breathing? How are you feeling? People like to do things for the public eye, but when it comes to you being in private by yourself, I feel that's an issue. And why do we have to be comfortable with uh, tending to ourselves? Case in point, some people don't know how to show up for a person, and sometimes we don't even know what to ask in terms of that support, because I mean, to even pull back from slavery times and what's been passed down intergenerationally, what's been passed down historically, things of that sort, and then our own personal pieces on top of that, what's been compounded over time, and just that fend for yourself type of mentality,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just in our culture alone, and that can be good or bad, because some people develop that independence on their own, that it's like, look, I'm not going to expect no one to be there for me. And then some people develop a false sense of independence where it's really rooted in bitterness. No one's there for me, so I don't want nobody. I don't need nobody. But we all really need somebody. But it's just a matter of perspective, and how should we approach actually tending to each other so we can heal as a collective.
Nice. Definitely want to point out something major that I heard was the performance of care. I think that that's huge, especially in this day and age where we live in a social media world
Mm-hmm.
where everything is just highlighted. Where the craziest thing, you can see the person who passed away, and they'll take a picture of them in the casket, not even thinking about how that might have effects not only the people who you're there for, but other people who may be viewing your story. Um, and so just being able to think like, okay, wait, so you showed up for the funeral, cool, very nice, thank you for your attendance, but who's there with me now?
Right.
And what happens now? And that happens a lot. So I definitely want to point that out. I also want to point out something that you said as you responded. So not necessarily right now, but when you did respond, something I thought was interesting is that you said, when we reach out, sometimes we come off as needy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that definitely sparked my interest as well, because what is the thin line between reaching out to get support from the people who's supposed to be your village and coming off as needy? And so I would just want you to elaborate on that.
Yeah. So, and I just had that thought in my head. It's going to come back to me. Yes. So, I was researching something not too long ago, and on top of certain books I was reading, one of my favorite authors is Resmaa Menakem. He wrote a book titled "My Grandmother's Hands," talks about racialized trauma. One of the things that he talked about was how over time these things can be decontextualized. So it'll show up as personality. It may show up as family traits in a family over time, like when trauma or when you know unaddressed pain is decontextualized over time, what it can look like. And one of the things that I would say, like, in terms of that grief decontextualized in a person over time can look like attention seeking when it's really attachment seeking.
Mm.
So attention seeking will be associated to someone coming off as if they're needy, when really they're just looking for support. They're just looking for someone at that moment to hold them up. They're not trying to use them as a crutch forever. But I feel as if if you know what to ask for, if you have that level of emotional intelligence, it shouldn't be a problem to say what you may need at that moment, or to find someone to help you discover that language. That's why I'm really big on therapy and just helping individuals like us to get that language and say, listen, I'm not doing too good today. Can you please come over? I just want to make sure that I'm okay, so I don't do anything, regrettable. Um, yeah, and to also, yeah, just that's basically what I mean in terms of that. So yeah, yeah, I'm gonna
Okay.
leave that other thought for the. Yeah, I didn't love the thought, but I'm feeling gonna ask a question that I thought was gonna come to me, so I'll pull
It's
back on that thought.
okay. It's okay. So thank you.
And someone
Definitely
said,
have
"Or bother." Right, right, yeah,
definitely have time to get the thought back. So we'll switch it over to Deandra. So I'll restate the question. So the question was, how come it takes a village to raise a child, but as an adult, we must be comfortable with growing alone?
I think it's interesting that when Earl started, he stated that he was more so focused on the adult component of that question, whereas my thoughts immediately go to the child in the village. Um, I'm a firm believer that a child needs different supports and different people within their life to guide them and get them to the next destination, help them build their independence. And so I automatically go to, yes, it does take a village to raise a child. That also comes from not having too big of a village myself being raised, right? And
mm,
so just thinking of the supports I could have used as a child, the supports that I see in the kids that I deal with daily that they could use. Um, and I think that we have similar thoughts in terms of it then does turn into, as you become an adult, being needy or having that dependence or wanting to have somebody there. But I think for me, it's just more so, what do you do if you don't have it?
that's good.
What's the
Yeah,
next step?
yeah,
Because everyone doesn't have it, right? And
right,
so it does become, in a sense, some sort of maybe a defense mechanism, kind of pushing people away because you know people are not going to be there for you. But what do you do
yeah,
then? And I think that like that was my question. And so growing up or be believing that you're supposed to be an adult alone is a real thing. I grew up with like you was born alone, you die alone, which is true, right? And so as you transition into an adult and you decide what you want to do for yourself and you decide what your independence looks like, are you going to allow not having somebody in your corner to stop you from developing, to stop you from growing? And for me, the answer is no, right? For me, the answer is no. And I believe that if we catch kids while they're kids, for them, the answer could also be no, because it is not expected for anyone to be there for you,
I like
unfortunately,
that. Yeah,
right? We have our family, we have our friends, and that should be the case. In the perfect world, that would be the case, but we
right,
don't live in a perfect. And as Black and Brown people, even more so, are we separated from family and don't know our heritage and don't know our background. And there is this idea that you're in this alone, almost, right? Because a lot of our ancestors had to do it alone.
yeah,
And for me, it's a matter of pulling from that and not pushing away support or not or using that defense mechanism in terms of I don't need you or I don't want this. But knowing that if you don't have it, you have to be there for self.
yeah,
That's just real. That's as real as it can be. Like, you have to be there yourself. And so what do you do if you don't have that support?
Yeah.
And so I think adults are expected to be okay with being alone, because in reality, we can be alone. And if you have a spouse, or you have that family, or you have that friend that you can call on when someone passes away, and it's not just them coming to the funeral because it looks good for them, then great, amazing. But if you don't, then what? And I think
Right.
that's where my process went when the question was posed. Because then you do have to be the person that picks yourself up. You do have to be the person that you want to call somebody to cry to, but you don't have to. And so now you're sitting alone at home crying to yourself.
Right.
And do you allow to take over your life, or do you have that moment, be able to process that moment? Because a lot of us don't know how to process our emotions.
Right.
A lot of us have not grown and understood what it is to be emotional, to allow ourselves to be emotional.
Right.
Be able
Right.
to, if you are by yourself, how do you process that? How do you get out of that depression? How do you get out of that hurt?
Right.
How do you continue to live life? How do you continue to move forward knowing that you are in this on your own?
Right.
Thank you. I agree. So one of the things that was huge that you mentioned was, how do you process your emotions when you don't have anyone around you? And
Right.
that is huge. And I think that can tie to both of your points of, all right, so now what's next? When you don't have that level of support, what do you do now? And so that is a very good, I guess, idea or thought process that everyone should actually start to adopt, because then what can happen is we turn to our vices, we turn away to what we think is comfortable, which is why there's a liquor store on every other corner of a minority neighborhood, or just things of that sort, because it's like, okay, what's a quick fix, what's something that we can know that is going to numb our pain right now. And so before I even jump to my point, one of the things that Deandra, when you responded to the question, I thought was interesting, was when you stated that as children are more vulnerable and they're prone to like ignorance, but as an adult, we choose that. And so for that point, I just kind of wanted you to elaborate on stating that the level of ignorance between a child and an adult.
So I feel like children are naturally ignorant, and not in a negative way. Like, they just don't know
Right.
until
Right.
it becomes nature versus nurture. But at a certain point, it doesn't matter if it's nature or right. At a certain point, you learn different things. The world is changing, and you either take it on, accept it, see it for what it is, or you can choose to be ignorant.
Right.
And so I guess an example of that for me would be, if a kid in my school, and I work in a middle school, is awarded, incentivized with $20 for their attendance, right? They take that $20 and first day they blow it. They go bunch of candy, whatever. If that same thing occurred as we as adults, for a 30-year-old, you're getting paid to do a job, because essentially the incentive is them being paid to do a job, right? You get paid to do a job and you blow your paycheck. I can't have the same amount of understanding for you as I would as a child.
Right.
The child does not know any better. But you as you as an adult, and maybe you wasn't taught money management. A lot of us are not, right?
Right.
Maybe you wasn't taught how to manage your bills and things like that. But at some point, when do you sit back and teach yourself? Or are you going to blow your paycheck every day or every time you get paid, and then at the end of the month, the first of the month, you can't pay rent? And how many times are you going to do that before you realize this isn't working? A child
Absolutely.
could blow $20 every time. They're a child. They
Right.
in a perfect world, they have a roof over their head, they have food in their stomach, they have clothes on their back. That 20 is for play, right? As an adult, at what point are you going to realize that this is not the way you should manage your money? And so I can't have the same, I don't know, I don't have the same understanding for an adult that does things that do things like that. Because at that point, I feel like you're choosing to be ignorant, because you have the experience now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have your home, You're living there, you know you have to pay rent. You know the first of the month is coming. Doesn't fail. Nobody misses the first of the month. It comes. So why are you choosing to not be prepared for that? At some point, you're choosing to not be adequately prepared for what is to come, for what's next, for what's expected of you as an adult. And a lot of the times that does come from the way we were raised or the way we grew up or not being taught that. But you see what's going on around you. You live in a complex of 100 other people. They live here because they pay their rent.
Right.
And so why is it that you think, oh, I'm not paying my rent this month? Like, that's just not how it works. And at some point, you're choosing that. You're choosing to not financially stabilize yourself at that point. And so that's where that came from in terms of, I feel like a child can be ignorant, but a child is ignorant because they are children still. They're learning. And as they get older, they learn. And so something that it was okay for you to do when you were 5 is not going to be the same when you're 15.
Right.
A trauma at 5, throwing a temper tantrum at 5 is not going to be the same at 15. At 15, your parent is going to look at you like, what is going on? This is not appropriate. You're sitting in the middle of the supermarket crying for some gummy bears. No. But at 5, it's going to be you're going to handle that differently. Right? And so at 25, 35, as we continue, it's just certain things you learn just based off of who you're around. It is nature and nurture in a sense as we continue to grow.
Yes.
But at some point, you're choosing to not understand what you need to do for self, for your betterment. And that bothers me.
And so, first off, thank you. And so, how do you feel? And I want to lead this question to Earl because you both have, DeAndre, you're more children focused, and Earl, you seem more like adult focused. And so, one of the things, DeAndre, as you were speaking, you stated there are some people who aren't taught. And so I wanted to grasp onto that because what happens is, of course, we're all children and we grow into adults, but some children does not have those tools and those necessary kind of nuggets to say, okay, wait, this is right, this is wrong, this is how you are supposed to behave in the supermarket, this is how you shouldn't. And so for Earl, how do you feel about what she said of just the idea of, okay, there's some people who aren't taught. And so if you're not taught, where does that leave the adults within that situation that still needs that urge of a community to say, wait, look, you gonna get in trouble if you keep doing this. Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, if I have to use myself as an example, I didn't have those appropriate resources when I was a kid, to know what was wrong, what wasn't wrong. We got reprimanded harshly for making mistakes as a kid. I know I was reprimanded harshly. So it built this inferiority complex within me. So when I wanted to ask questions outside of the home, like in school, there was a fear there because I felt like if I was reprimanded at home, this might happen outside. So automatically my safety was compromised. My level of safety was compromised. And as a result of that, it spilled over into, my teenage years and being in school and not finishing high school, because I just, that spilled over. So what happened in the household to me as a kid, and I'm not saying it was completely bad, but there was times that it was chaotic, being that happened to me. So when I got into my adult years, it took me a while to learn responsibility. I didn't know what accountability meant. I didn't know what responsibility meant, because it was always, you should know better this, you should know better that. And I was hearing, you should know better at the age of 8. And I'm like, know better in terms of what? Like, what is there that I should know better about so that I can actually be this adult, responsible adult that you see in your mind for me when I get older, so that I'm not, stubbing my toe and cussing when something happens where I can't pay my rent or I can't handle bills or I don't understand the importance of numbers and things of that sort. So yeah, it really spilled over into, my academic journey where I dropped out of high school and then I had to go back to college, and I was afraid to go to college because I didn't feel like I was smart enough, because me having a voice as a child was not allowed. So I didn't learn certain things because it was like I was afraid to ask questions. So when I met other people in my life, like my pastor, who's probably watching on the low, you know, was like, you gotta learn how to do certain things. So he was just teaching me, the adult concepts, like, pay your stuff on time, make sure you do this because that's how you build up your credit, be integral. If you're gonna say you're gonna be somewhere with somebody, or you're gonna do something, keep your word. Um, some people I feel don't know, or they may not feel confident enough to step into it because of fear. Like you said, it could be annoying, but I like to kind of like ask people, okay, like, what happened in your childhood that kind of, why are you like this? Like, what happened to you? Because I know if you were in your right state of mind, you wouldn't make certain mistakes that you're making as an adult. And some people, in most times, in most cases, even some men will tell you it's out of fear, but it's hard for us as men to admit that, because anything that makes us look weak, that's already a problem. But me, I don't care. I'm vulnerable as heck. I'll tell people, like, you want to know, I'll tell you. But but after a while, I hope that I'm answering your question, because sometimes I can go off on a tangent. It really caused me to really get myself together and to be more of a responsible adult as a husband, as a father. I have two girls, so that's a whole another thing. So just working hard just to make sure that they see what an example of a man is supposed to look like, regardless of what has happened to me as a kid and the mistakes that I made as a result of that. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, yes, you did answer my question, because I wanted to hear more on the adult aspect of responding to what she said.
Yeah.
So I would actually like to kind of give my little background as to why I actually wrote this question. Probably should have done this a little earlier, but I actually wanted to hear you. I was very eager to hear both of your perspectives, but I saw, for those who just joined, the actual question is, how come it takes a village to raise a child, but as an adult, we must be comfortable with growing alone? And so that question actually originated from both perspectives. I actually work with children and I work with adults. I work with children who are within the foster care system. So being able to see those children and see although they have very unfortunate circumstances, they have many people around them who are pushing them to succeed, who want them to kind of be the best version of themselves. But those children can't actually see that because they're paying more attention to the people it's coming from versus what the message is. Right. And what that means is they're in foster care. No child, in my opinion, deserves to be or deserves that road or that path. And so for them, they're more inclined to receive the messages that we're giving them and say, okay, no, I don't want it. And so as they become an adult, which is who else I do work with as adults within the therapeutic realm, they're more inclined to say, well, I was never taught this, or I have to fend for me. It's me against the world. And so they have that very argumentative kind of mental space where it's just like, okay, well, I got me. And so where does this actually put both generations? Where does this put the children, where they do have somewhat of a village, but not necessarily the best outcome, because they are being realistic. Some people I work there just for the check. They don't care nothing about those kids. And so the village that they have been placed with, and the village that they're actually in, no one actually really cares to see the children out, to see how they make it through.
Right.
And so the importance of the village in itself is to state, okay, well, once the kids age out of foster care, for example, what happens? We never see them again unless, there's no village. And with us, within the foster care system, we actually do everything for them. Like, being realistic, we do everything for them. And what that means is that they're actually not being taught. And so that brings us back to the points that you guys were making, that they're not actually being taught sometimes the necessary tools, because when they go up to college or age out of care, they end up back where they started, back in that childlike mental space, back in that, okay, well, I don't know, back in the being over 21 throwing tantrums in a supermarket. And so that leads me to my next question. So if this is the case, if we're conditioned to, not going to generalize, if some people are conditioned to say, well, this is what we have to do. We have to make sure that we don't depend on anybody else, because if we give our all to someone and they fumble, where does that leave me? And so if that's the case, then what happens now? What do you feel like are some tools, or what do you think um, the older generation can actually benefit or start to utilize now that they're not always granted the opportunity of that village that they once had as a child? And so, Deandra, I'm going to ask you that question.
Off the back, I would say we have to begin to build emotional intelligence. To build emotional intelligence, to build emotional awareness, to build skills, interpersonal skills, and stress tolerance skills. Being mindful of ourselves, being mindful of our environment, being mindful of what we want to do, setting a plan, trying to be organized. Um, I think I want to make a point that you said that within your organization, you guys do everything for the kids, and they have people around them, and technically they have a village. But just because people are around you doesn't mean that it's a village. Kids are one of the best when it comes to peeping fake. Like, they know when someone is there for them for real. They know when someone cares for real, whether they want to hear it or not. And teenagers, of course, going through their hormonal stages, don't want to listen to anybody. But even they know who's really there for them. Even if you're bugging them every day about something, at the end of the day, you're the person they're going to come and thank, because they know that you did it out of care, not because you had to, not because your check depended on it, but because you really cared that they succeeded. And so I think that is important for us to build different emotional awareness about ourselves. And it's great to go to therapy, and it's great to have a village behind you and to have a system behind you. But there are times where you have to do it for self, right? And so for me, I'm big on DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. And that's really just an understanding of yourself, is an understanding of your dialectics in terms of what has occurred, being okay with what occurred, accepting what has occurred, but also, what am I going to do next? What am I going to change? What is my next move? And learning how to live in the world of both, because what happened, right?
Yeah.
Whatever we've gone through as children, it occurred. I also grew up in a home where you respected the elder, and that was it, right? And there were certain things instilled in me that I had to teach myself to grow out of. I had to teach myself wasn't okay. And certain simple things like, the older child takes care of the youngest, right? Love my siblings, will forever care for them. But I have two younger siblings who are now adults, and there are times where they will still reach out and want things in terms of money, or needing help with something that I'm not gonna. For a long time, it took me a while to learn no.
Yeah.
It took me a while to tell them no, because I was conditioned that I am supposed to care for them. And as an older sister, absolutely, I care for you. I will always care for you. But at a certain point, there are things that you have to do on your own. And not because I had to do it, or that's the route that I had to take, but more so because I want you to learn that. More so because I need you to know that if you have nobody in this world, you're able to function still. And it should never come down to not having anybody, but realistically, it happens. And that could be from family strife, that could be from different traumas, that could be from deaf, right? But at some point, you are just you. And so learning to say no to them, and then having the conversation of, well, if you just got paid on Friday, why are you asking me for money on Monday? And really having those real conversations, because you are an adult now. You can't keep functioning this way. You can't, right? Um, and so yeah, I say that we have to build. We do have to build our own skills. We do have to be able to get out of the funks that we have, and instead of going to the liquor store, maybe going to the gym. And this is coming from like experience, right? This is coming
Right.
from my own traumas, my own growing up. And I'm actively in the process of this. Like, I'm not an expert. I'm not fully functioning. I'm not a fully functioning adult yet. I do okay. Right. I do okay.
We all, I think we all say,
We all do
And I think
okay.
a lot of people are doing okay.
Right.
Right. But it's something that I'm actively in the process of. It's something that I'm actively in the process of shifting my mindset so that I'm not upset with where I am 10, 20, 30 years from now. And that's something that I think everyone has to do regardless of upbringing. And so back to the kids that you have in foster care, again, just because you have people around you, it doesn't mean that it's a village. But at some point, regardless of how they were raised or what their circumstances was that got them into foster care, are they going to be successful people in this world, or is that going to be their story? Does their story end with, I was in foster care and so I can't function at 40, or I was in foster care, or so I think nobody's ever going to love me correctly for me? And or are we going to learn that that was a portion of your life that you went through, whatever it may have been, as traumatic as it may have been, but you are also in control of what comes next. You are also in control of your growth.
Yeah.
You're also in control of your independence. You're in control of, just because I didn't have that at 15 doesn't mean that this person who's showing me that they absolutely love and adore me doesn't really love me at 25, because at 15 I was betrayed, right? So at some point, at what point do we choose to not be ignorant to the tools that are handed to us and to take them ourselves? Nobody handed them to us. Nobody giving them to us, nobody leading us to them, but to pick them up on our own and say, I'm going to utilize this in the best way I know how. I'm going to practice until I know better. I'm going to practice until it makes more sense. And then give that to the next generation, right? I don't have any kids currently, want some, but you stated that you have children. And you also stated that the way you were raised wasn't the best. Is that something that you would, is the way you were raised something that, a way that you would raise your children now?
Oh no,
Right.
absolutely not.
And that's because, right. And you wasn't taught that as a child, right? You was taught
Right.
what you was taught as a child.
Right.
But you as an adult know that it wasn't the best and it
Absolutely.
wasn't the right way. Now you could sit and say, you know what, I got beat for not washing the dishes when I was 9, and so now my daughter has to wash dishes, or it was up for her, right?
Right.
But no, why would you do that? Because you know
Exactly.
what that was like. You know the trauma it caused. You know the emotional distress that it caused.
Right.
So why would you do that to your child?
Exactly.
And there are people who can't get past it. And there are people who raise their children the way they were raised, who were raised by the generation before. And we could keep going back and back and back. And they haven't learned to get out of that generational trauma.
Yeah.
And so at some point, it's a choice. At some point, you choose to be better. And I think that comes with building your own skills, your own emotional understanding of self, and also understanding of other people.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it there.
Drops mic. No, definitely agree. One of the most powerful things. Not first off, thank you for sharing. That was
That was
extremely.
so good.
Yeah, that was good.
That was so
That
good.
was good. I'm trying to eat it. I didn't want to talk. Like, all
Right. I'm not
okay,
talking
wrap
after
it up.
that.
Wrap it up. One of the things that really stuck with me, one of the many things that stuck with me with what you said, is that a village does not equal company. And so that is huge because this brings back to what Earl was saying earlier of who we keep around and how we interact with others as an adult. And so now we're receiving people and saying, okay, well, this person is here for me. This person is, this person does this for me, whether that is negative or positive. And so grasping onto that company because we're not familiar with the fact that this company does not equal my village. This company is just here.
Right.
And so that was definitely, I mean, like you said, it's hard for me to even speak on it because it was just like, wow, that was powerful.
She came out the gate.
Right. I was like, okay, well, Earl, you up next?
Nah, I don't got nothing to say. I would have said the same thing.
You're up next on just speak on what do you think should change? How do you feel like, and you could speak on whether this is in the perspective of an adult or a child, completely up to you, but how do you feel like we can, as a community or as a person, how do you feel like this whole aspect of being your own village could possibly grow and possibly change?
Just basically being aware of, like what was said earlier, just being aware of your emotional intelligence and developing skills. Like was said, at some point you're gonna have to be aware enough to know that what you've been through and what you're doing now is not serving you well. And completely divorcing your mindset from the idea that I'm always going to be this person and that's all there is to my life, which is not the case. In order for us to even be better individuals, we have to take responsibility for how we move forward. We understand that, like just understanding like the generational curses, generational trauma, whatever the case may have been, and understanding that some people are still stuck because we know trauma is just a component of stuckness, and we have 50-year-old 12-year-olds because of that event that happened in their life, 35 6-year-olds, you understand what I'm saying, and just to bring that level of awareness, because some people, if they feel like they don't want to change, they're not going to. If they don't see anything wrong with how they're behaving and how they're thinking and how it can be a detriment to just their overall development, they're not going to change. Some people are just stubborn. We can't slap, everything is not trauma, right? Some things are, and some things are your awareness as well, and your admittance to, listen, I grew up in this environment that it didn't serve me well, so change the narrative. Like you asked me, I'm not going to sit there and get my daughters for something that they don't even have a full awareness or understanding of. Homework, for me, I hated homework. Like, I just hated it because of how, but now I've grown to love school, of course, because I didn't went all the way to get a master's. We all have our masters. So we all have our masters, right? So obviously we have to love school to some extent and change that and break that generational pattern of not having those examples we needed when we were kids. So now as adults, like you said, distress tolerances, money management, we need classes on financial literacy, not just mental health. How can we better support each other as a community and stop this whole rat race? I'm trying to just get the bag and you still broke. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's like, what bag are you trying to get? You still broke because you're trying to run everything by yourself. We all need each other at some point at some time. We all do. It may not be forever, but whatever the duration of that needing each other should fit, there should be some sort of, I should be able to listen to the both of you and leave this conversation with me wanting to do more, just because I'm inspired, just because I'm encouraged to hear or see Black women excellence. Okay, there needs to be Black male excellence as well. Because y'all been doing it forever, but we as men need to get it together. We need to get up. Period. We're supposed to be the examples, right? We're supposed to carry the seed for the next generation. So speaking for men, school may not be your thing, and that's fine. But being in a corner should not be your life as well. Learn a trade. Put the bottle down. Put the cigarettes down. Put all those substances, put those vices down. Because there's no way, and I've done it in the past. I've done it in the past where instead of me dealing with my emotions, I numb them. So anytime something crazy happened to me, I used to go to liquor stores. I used to mix my own drinks. All of that, and I got to a point where I'm like, yo, this isn't doing anything for me. Like, I really need to go talk to someone. And it was that light bulb, like, that just flickered off. And it's like, all right, Earl, you need to do better. So I had to develop a level of emotional intelligence. I had to, come up in financial literacy. I had to come up in education and just what it means to be a person overall, and how to foster and steward, my connections and not jeopardize them because I want to be in my bag all the time. Or I feel like I have a chip on my shoulder and I feel entitled. I feel like a lot of people in our community, or some, I won't even overgeneralize that. Some people in our community feel entitled when they've done nothing to feel entitled in the first place. Done absolutely nothing, have absolutely nothing to show for themselves, but want to feel a sense of entitlement. Sooner or later, some of us are going to have to leave welfare alone and get a regular job. And it sounds harsh, but it's like, at some point, we're going to have to. At some point, we're going to have to step up our game and really be that example for this next generation that we're trying to raise. If we're going to interrupt that bloodline of generational trauma, then we have to transfer generational healing. We have to transfer generational wealth. We have to transfer generational education. We have to do that, because people feel a lot of entitlement. That's unacceptable. It's very unacceptable. And we can't keep blaming the white man forever, because some of us actually were in schools where we did not see much of us. As we go through the corridors, as we elevate in academia, the less of you'll see there. So race does have an issue with it. It does play its role, but it doesn't play its role in everything. So yeah, I'll digress because I don't want to get in trouble. I'll digress. Go ahead.
Getting into muddy water.
Right. Right. Just leave that alone.
That's a whole nother debate.
That's a whole nother debate, and I'm not even trying to.
We're gonna leave it at that.
This is not CNN. I'm sorry.
We're gonna leave it there, but yes, that was definitely first off, your responses to both of you have been amazing. One of the things that two of the things that I wanted to point out is everything is not trauma. And so that's one of the things that actually stuck with me, because one of the things I started to think about is when you were saying that is, sometimes developmental wise, we are the age of our trauma. If we don't heal that person, if we don't heal where we are, right, we stay that portion. So if something happened, for example, to us when we were 12, and we don't heal that 12-year-old, mentally, a part of our brain and a part of the way we develop is still in that level of 12.
Right.
And so so when you said that, it kind of clicked to say, okay, wait a minute. Yes, there are, I would never take anybody's trauma away from them. There are traumatic experiences, but being able to identify, okay, is this life or is this trauma? Is this the life that I have been dealt with, or is this trauma? Is this a regular upbringing in the hood, being realistic? Is this where our, realistic of when we walk out in the street and we see specific things? Is this regular? And not to normalize things that's not supposed to be normal, but is this our normal, or did this trigger me, or did this does this specific experience have a lasting experience on my life?
Right.
And so when you were able to say, everything is not trauma, that kind of clicked to say, okay, wait a minute, let's dissect this a little bit more. Not so much right now, but just being able to say, okay, let's dissect this a little bit more. What experience did you go through, and how is it affecting you today? I think it's very important for us to start dissecting what trauma is actually, especially in this day and age where trauma and triggered is thrown. I mean, the two
Loosely.
words is like very loosely. This triggered me, so I'm gonna behave this way. No, you need to learn specific behavioral cues and be able to adapt to different situations. And so that portion of what you were saying really stuck with me. And just to end off what you were saying was, if we could pass down generational trauma, why can't we pass down generational healing? And so that was huge for me to hear, because it's very true. We could, and everybody was saying within the comments of, repetitive and breaking cycles, why aren't we trying to break the cycle beforehand? Why
Yeah.
are we still giving off this same behavior and knowing that we've lived through it and we're not okay with it, but we're still going to give it off to our children, or we're still going to act this specific way? And so when do we stop demonstrating the behaviors that we never were comfortable with to begin with? And so that portion of what you were saying is huge. It's time to, if nobody takes anything from this whole discussion, it's time to pass down healing. It's time to pass down, trauma is done. Like, it's time to pass down little stuff like, okay, wait a minute, you don't have to do that. Yes, I've experienced this. Let me tell you what I've done and what I've been through, so that you don't have to go through that. And so that my original question is, how come it takes a village to raise a child, but as an adult we must be comfortable alone? Pay attention to what's happening as an adult. Paying attention to the people we're having around that's still trapped in that cycle,
Yeah.
that's still passing down the same levels of trauma, and when does it stop?
Yeah.
And
Ooh,
so I think that go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, no, I wanted to ask if I could say something with that.
Go ahead.
So, one of my best friends is on here. So he's watching. He just made a hashtag, pass down healing. I think a lot of, I think, so I think people don't understand the meanings of generational curses and like traditional
Mm-hmm.
mannerisms. So it's like you can't effectively break or dismantle or do away with generational curses if you still want to keep traditional behaviors that actually can perpetuate that generational curse or the generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's something we talked about years ago. And it's like, because I grew up in church, so like, I'm still in church because I'm a leader in my church. And so over my years of just observing and studying and researching, I'm like, man, it's like, how can we successfully break or get rid of generational curses if we keep justifying our traditionalism?
Mm.
It's always going to be a hit or miss,
Yeah.
and it doesn't, and it's not going to help. So once we are aware and we can identify what has been traditional and unhealthy traditionalism, then we can
Mm-hmm.
really get down to it, get to the root of the issues, stop decontextualizing them, and then actually see, you know, generational healing be passed down. So trauma doesn't get passed down again and come off as culture.
Nice.
It doesn't
Yeah.
come off as family traits. It doesn't come off as personality. It doesn't come off as success or indifference.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I think I wholeheartedly agree. I think we've reached a generation that is at least ready to begin those changes.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
we've reached a generation that is ready to change
Yeah.
and it has taken time. But
Oh
just
yeah.
in being a millennial and I don't know what's after us, Gen Z, Gen Y, but it is very different. It's very different. And in our families, even in when it comes down to work,
Yeah.
the generation after us, they leaving. They don't like the rules and regulations, or they don't feel like it's fair work, or they're quitting. No 2 week notice.
Ooh.
Right. And I think that stands more to boundaries and setting those boundaries for
Right.
self and knowing what you want for self, as opposed to generations that came before us that they worked because they had to.
No.
Like literally they were told to. Like, you have to do this work. I don't care if you don't like the conditions.
Yeah.
Our ancestors were slaves. They didn't have a choice.
Let's
And then
talk about
as
it.
we continue to, as the generations continued, you worked because you needed the money. You worked because you may have just got this great job and we have affirmative action, so you're the only Black person in the agency, and so now you have to make a name for self, and you holding the whole culture on your back, but you hate
Right.
the conditions of where you're working. I think we have reached a generation that is ready to say, set boundaries and ready to say, I don't like this, and so I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now,
Yeah.
can they kind of fix it in terms of the way it's said and the way it's
Right.
delivered? I
Kind of
say
tweak it a
so.
little bit.
Tweak it a little bit, because there's still a level of professionalism that has to remain,
Sure.
and there's a level of respect that needs to remain. But I think we've reached a generation that's ready to change things. I think we've reached the generations that's ready to let our family know that this is not okay. Like, grandma, when I come to Thanksgiving, you don't need to tell me that I got fat. Like, I don't want to hear it. That's not okay.
Hello.
You
Somebody
know,
hold
like,
me up.
I think we have come upon that generation that is just going to keep getting better and better. But we also have to find a way to instill it, to keep the respect and to keep the professionalism and to keep the ability to, because I am a firm believer in terms of not disrespecting an adult, not disrespecting an elder. I was raised that way. But also, what is disrespect?
Mm-hmm.
And I think questioning that is important, because for disrespect for us, if I didn't speak to you, you shouldn't be speaking.
Mm-hmm.
If I ask you to do something, you get up and you do it, and you have no quarrels about it. But is a child saying, "Mom, I don't think this is fair," because disrespect, or is that allowing your child to have a voice? So we have to change the tradition, and I think we've reached that generation, and it's going to keep getting better. I have faith.
Agreed. Whew. Thank you. Sorry, both of you have very great responses. So I do want to just keep in track of time. So I want to just give you all just like a last comments, and anybody in the comments section, if you want to say a question, comment, or anything, please feel free to do so. Just the last piece of a takeaway, if you guys want to share, before we end. Earl, would you like to just say like your last pieces of a takeaway before we just close out?
Yeah. Just I hope, my hope is that, everyone that was listening tonight really, took something from this dialogue. We're not doing it to show off. We're really talking about these issues because these are things that really happen and really go on in life. And in order for us to be better, we have to do more than listening. We have to become doers as well.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Deandra?
I echo that. I think that it's important for those who have tuned in to really pay attention of the two. I think the topics were opposite but the same. I think that both sides of the coin needs the same things.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for us to pay attention to what we're doing, to pay attention to what we're giving, to pay attention to the way that we are relaying our culture, and
Yeah.
what are we doing to change it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And making sure we're stepping back and saying, you know what, this may not be the best way to do that. Questioning yourself. Just that 5 seconds of questioning yourself, I think could change a lot.
Agreed. So my last comments is to just bring awareness. I started this platform to bring awareness to difficult conversations that we need to have. Bring awareness to conversations that we see every day but no one talks about. To get rid of the social media aspect of we're going to record this and not support. We're going to record this and not speak up. We're going to allow our brothers and sisters to fail or to not succeed, knowing that we have the tools in our left pocket. And so I started this in order to share and by the grace of God, I'll be able to place this on my actual page. Hopefully, not so tech savvy, but being able to reach out to those who are not sitting right across from each other, and being able to say, just know we're not showing off, but we are here. We are trying to support. We are trying to say, okay, hey, we see you. We know this is happening. Let's talk about it. And so, with that being said, I would like to thank both Deandra and Earl for joining us for this session, and all of the people who have viewed. This was an amazing conversation. You guys made me feel very comfortable, and this was just overall very great. And so, thank you to all of those who are saying that this was a great session that you guys enjoyed. So, with that being said, have a great night. I hope you both thank you for spending your Friday night with me. Have an amazing night. And we will do this again next time.
Okay.
Good night.
Right. Good night.
All right. Good night.
So good morning. Good morning. I'm setting everything up now. So give me a second. Oh hey. So I think you have to request to join. You have to accept. Oh, there we go.